Hey everybody, in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about the best practice strategies to do well on the LSAT, or the Law School Admissions Test. The LSAT is one of the major gating items to getting into law school, and even though the American Bar Association, or the ABA, is considering getting rid of any testing requirements for applicants to get into law school, that is not yet the case, and a final decision on that is going to be made in 2025. So until then, the LSAT is with us, and if you want to get into law school, my recommendation is always to take the LSAT rather than the GRE, because law school admissions committees are more used to the LSAT. Before we begin, and for those who are new here, hello, my name is Julian Serafian. I'm a lawyer, I'm a content creator, I'm an advocate for mental health, I'm also a dog dad. Please hit that sub button, drop a comment for content you want to see, and let's get into it. Now, the LSAT is composed of 3 sections: logical reasoning, logic games, and reading comprehension. There is also a 4th experimental section, which is non-graded, but you don't know which one of those sections on the exam is the experimental one. That's part of the trick. And there's an essay component that's non-graded as well. I'm not going to get too in-depth in this video on what these sections look like and what they are, because I think you guys can Google that. Instead, I'm going to jump right into what I think are the most important and effective pieces of advice for studying for the LSAT. And by the way, if you want to know how I studied and what my score was, wait until the end of the video. First of all, the LSAT is an intelligence-based and IQ-structured exam. What I mean by that is this is not an exam that you can sit and memorize for. Instead, this exam tests your ability to critically think and demonstrate analytical reasoning in the form of various types of questions, like logic games, which are kind of like miniature puzzles, logical reasoning, which gives you a set of facts and then rule statements and requires you to manipulate them, and reading comprehension, which I personally despise, but you read a passage, you answer questions. Because of this, the most effective way that you can study for this exam and get your score up is by taking practice tests and focusing on the curriculum of the LSAT itself. I do not recommend studying other types of questions or taking your college coursework, for example, and thinking, oh, how can I apply this to the LSAT? It's just not going to work. Unlike the MCAT, which is testing things like organic chemistry, physics, biology, which are also taught in college, the LSAT is not like that. It's its own beast. Now let's start with timing. When should you start studying for this exam? I recommend 3 to 6 months before the exam date that you want to take. That's when you should start studying, and you should ramp up from studying, a couple hours a week to a couple hours a day to ideally doing, 5 to 7 hours a day if you have the bandwidth. But I know that that's a lot of time and a huge commitment. But 3 to 6 months is enough time for you to understand where are your weak points, drill as many practice questions and exams as you can, and then improve your score. When you start studying, I recommend beginning with a high-level overview of the types of questions that are asked and figuring out, just at a baseline, what do these questions look like? What do they feel like? Because jumping right into practice questions, you're going to be wasting those precious pieces of curriculum, because again, you don't have unlimited practice questions here, right? Thankfully, the Law School Admissions Committee does release all of their past exams, but to date, I believe there's something like 120 or 130 of them, which are not that many, considering that that's the only main resource that you have to study. If you want recommendations on what I believe are really helpful curriculum for learning an overview of all of the questions, the Power Score Bibles are great. Now, once you have a general foundation of understanding the types of questions and what they ask, it's time to dive right into practicing. I recommend beginning practice untimed so that you have time to really figure out how to diagram questions correctly and get the form down, right? This is just like exercise or lifting weights. If you do things quickly without the correct form, in the long run, it's not going to help you. You need to be able to do these things slowly, methodically, and correctly, and then ramp up to doing them more efficiently and quickly. So I would suggest taking the oldest exams that are released, because those are the most outdated, and the types and format of those questions are going to be most dissimilar to the newer questions, on more recent exams. I would take them section by section, so you don't have to sit down and time yourself and do like a whole exam in 4 hours, right? But take them section by section and just go through them slowly. And when you get an answer wrong, it's not enough to say, oh, that's the correct answer, okay, let's move on. You need to figure out why you got it wrong, and you need to understand going forward what it is that you could do better understanding and taking these tests and questions so that you get it right in the future. And I know that this may seem abstract to you, but I promise it will come in time. When I practiced, it took me about 20 to 30 exams worth of practice questions before I really started getting momentum and confidence in understanding, oh, like this type of question I've seen before and I answer it this way. So be patient with yourself, as difficult as that may be, because I know it's stressful and I know it's frustrating when you're getting these questions wrong. After you've gone through 10 to 20 exams worth of practice questions, it's time to start timing yourself and getting quicker and quicker. There's no right or wrong here with how how much time you want to allocate to yourself to do these questions. But just remember that the goal is by, the 50 or 60th practice exam, you are taking these sections at the exact same amount of time that the law school admissions committee is offering you on exam day, because you want to emulate the testing conditions as much as possible in your practice, especially the closer you get to the exam. Other general pieces of advice: cross out answers that you know are incorrect off the bat and build that habit early on. The less clutter you have in your mind, the better. So crossing exam answers out that you know are wrong, it's just going to help you. And learn how to diagram for the logic games and the logical reasoning sections. It is absolutely essential. Don't be cocky and think, oh, I could do this all in my head, because the reality is, even if you could, you're going to do it a lot more effectively. You're going to get more questions right if you learn how to diagram appropriately. And I've linked some videos below that walk through how to diagram. And last but not least, do not be discouraged if your score is not where you want it to be, especially when you begin. When I started studying for the LSAT, my first score on a practice exam was 142. And I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I'm screwed. I'm never going to get into a T14 or a top law school like I'd always hoped. But over the course of 6 months, my score went up and up and up. And eventually I was scoring consistently in the 170s on practice exams. When the day of the exam came, I scored a 170, which, to be honest, I was really disappointed by, because I was scoring consistently higher than that on practice. And I did not sleep well the night before. I was super anxious. And there were 2 reading comp sections back in the day on my exam, which is the worst possible scenario for me, because that is my weakest section. Other things to keep in mind here: this exam is biased towards English native speakers. If English is not your first language, consider doing practice or reading a dictionary, or just developing as quickly as you can a deeper expertise of the English language, because unfortunately they use terms and vocabulary on this exam that you need to know what these words mean. Otherwise, you're not going to know the logical connection between the various parts of the question that they're asking. And I get a lot of questions about whether or not I recommend taking a course like Testmasters or Kaplan. And my take on these courses is that they're a ton of money. So, law school is already going to be expensive. These courses range from like $1,000 to $2,000. That's a lot of cash, especially for a pre-law student. And the main benefit these courses offer is keeping you on track and making sure that you're studying. Do not expect these courses to help you build a conceptual and deep understanding of how to answer these questions effectively. A lot of them just have their own methodologies that they've constructed to answer questions, but in reality, the thing that will help you the most is practicing and practicing and practicing and getting your brain used to the types of questions and how you can most efficiently and effectively answer them on exam. And you don't need a course for that. I took Testmasters and I don't think it helped me in particular, but of course it was still $1,000. And my last piece of parting wisdom for you is don't rush with this exam. If you don't score well, there is now an option to cancel your score. Consider canceling it, right? Law schools are not going anywhere. You have all the time in the world here. I know it can feel when you're pre-law and you want to go to law school like, oh my God, the clock is ticking. What if I'm going to be 25, 26, 30 when I end up going to law school? Remember that the LSAT is such an important part of your application that it's worth taking an extra year or two if you can boost that score 10 to 15 points, not just because you can get into a better law school, but because the better your statistics are, the more financial aid you're going to receive from whatever law schools you decide to go to. And that's huge. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars, right? So don't rush it. Do this at your own pace. All right, everybody, that's it from me on the LSAT. I hope you found this video helpful. Best of luck studying. If you ever have questions or you want more resources, join the Discord below. It's primarily a pre-law Discord, but we also talk about mental health in there. Please hit that sub button. Drop a comment if you have ideas on videos that you want to see in the future or pieces of advice that you'd like to hear about. And I hope you're well wherever you are. Take care. Thanks again.